Thanks, girl. That's my daughters, Colin, Tony, and Michaela. And thank you all for coming. I had to say it. All right, this is where we start. This is the start of a new year, and it's the start of a new era. It's time for a new generation of leadership to emerge. It's time for a new kind of candidate, a candidate that is far more interested in making our great state and nation a better place to live than with winning the next election. A candidate that can and will stand up for ordinary Utahns simply because he is one. I am that candidate. I am Jeramey McElhaney, and I'm running for Congress. I'm not a career politician. In fact, I've never held an elected office before, but I've been active politically for about 10 years. And I've been getting ever more frustrated with the way that people's business is being handled in our great nation. The career politicians have failed us time and time again. They have failed to act on any of the important issues of the day. They have put their desire to get reelected over their duty to serve their constituents. This is no longer an option. These elected officials work for us. If they're not going to do the job that we elect them to do, then we should retire them, replace them with people that will solve our problems instead of avoiding our problems. So let me tell you why I'm going to run for Congress in the first place. The first reason is for my kids. As I look at them, I feel sorrow and anger, because I know their one chance at life is being burdened by the greed and arrogance of others. Those in power today are shifting blame and responsibility to the next generation, and that doesn't sit well with me at all. But to understand where I'm going, first, you must understand where I've been. I've spent my entire life living in rural Utah. My two greatest heroes are my dad and my grandpa. When I was growing up, I saw these two great men make sacrifices and extraordinary decisions for their families. My grandpa was a big, powerful man, but I saw the toll that years of backbreaking labor took on his body. He spent years on the docks, loading and unloading trucks in the days before forklifts were common. He understood the value of hard work. He worked overtime every chance he got, trying to give his children an opportunity to have a life he would never know. And all my life, I never once heard him complain. My dad worked as an underground uranium miner. Every day, he would venture into a world without light. Uranium miners are paid by tonnage, so the harder you work, the more money you'll earn. My dad and his partner were nearly always the top producers on their ship. He understood the value of hard work. Then something happened. The price of uranium plummeted. Half the uranium miners were laid off, and 6 months later, the other half were let go. My dad was one of the last miners to lose a job. After months and months of searching, he found a job delivering Pepsi. My dad saw his annual income fall from over $30,000 a year to under $8,000. The challenges my family had to face were daunting, to say the least. The measure of any individual is not how they perform when things are going great, but how they perform when the tough times come. My parents made do. My mom sewed our clothes, and I swear she must have put bubble gum in my dad's paycheck because the money always seemed to last just far enough. It wasn't until several years later, when my dad finally fulfilled his dream of owning his own business, that I realized just how poor we really had been. But at the time, we were happy, and the family pulled together. I've met some pretty incredible people. I've met U.S. senators, I've met governors, I've met U.S. representatives, met all kinds of the state legislators, state senators, local elected officials, and when I was in college, I even met my childhood baseball hero. But in my eyes, none of these people really stack up to my dad or my grandpa. There's kind of a rugged nobility to the ordinary Utah that just can't be replaced by titles or offices. I've taken these lessons of hard work, love of family, and sacrifice to heart. I worked at a gas station to pay my way through college. And I suffered a back injury while working in construction, just before my oldest daughter was born. Thinking that my house building days would be over, and knowing I needed a steady job to provide for my wife and my new family, I learned to drive an 18-wheeler. Took a job driving for Dick Simon Trucking. The sacrifices over-the-road truck drivers make are incredible. In the first month of my daughter's life, I saw her 3 days, then I went out on the road, and I saw her for 3 more days after a month. The first 4 months of her life, I got to see her for 11 total days. I can't even describe to you what that does to my heart. I never get that time back. It's gone forever. As soon as possible, I took a job locally driving a cement mixer, and then after the summer season ended, I realized I was going to get laid off by being the junior driver. So I did something kind of incredible. Instead of taking unemployment and sit back watching TV, I went out and got another job so I would constantly be working, something that wasn't affected seasonally. I worked at this job for several years. but I never really found fulfillment in it. I felt like something was missing. I needed something more. So in 2004, I took a chance and started my own construction company. That's been my job ever since. We grew rapidly for several years, hiring more and more employees and tackling bigger and bigger projects. But then something happened there. The Great Recession hit us. I made choices and decisions that expanded my business. I mean, we worked hard, we put out a good product, and that's what made our business grow. But I didn't do anything wrong to make our businesses get smaller. These choices were caused by outside forces beyond our control. I think a person should have some control over their own destiny and not be totally subject to the whims of something we can't control. So this is where my kids come in. Too many people today are not making these sort of sacrifices. Too many policymakers are acting selfishly, thinking of their own best interests instead of that of their children. I know I would be willing to suffer any hardship if it would give my family and my kids a chance for a better life. I think most parents would do the same. We need this kind of worldview in Washington, someone who understands what we ordinary Utahns must go through just to make ends meet. Someone who understands the type of sacrifices that are made each and every day by ordinary people throughout our great state. I live in a home I built with my own hands. I know what it feels like to have to save money to pay a mortgage, just like you guys. I know what it feels like to have to save money to put your kids through college, just like you guys. I know what it's like to eat mac and cheese for 2 weeks just to have enough money to pay the bills, just like you guys. Our state is made up of a large geographic area. It's filled with an extremely diverse group of people. We have farmers, ranchers, coal miners, oil and gas drillers, contractors, teachers, college professors, students, doctors, and business owners of every shape and size. For too long, our representation has been entrusted to a select few with a limited ability to understand the ordinary Utah. I say our state needs to be represented in its entirety. We need a representative from Utah that is one of our own, a representative that will take those values that all us ordinary Utahns hold dear and stand up for those values back in the Marble Palaces in DC. In 2005, I was elected the president of the Red Rock Four-Wheelers. This four-wheel drive organization puts on the Easter Jeep Safari. That's the biggest four-wheel drive event in the world. The four-wheelers have over 500 members from nearly every state and 9 foreign countries. Jeep Safari has an annual participation of about 4,500 participants to the event. My first year as president in 2005, I worked on the 20-year resource management plan. This is a comprehensive study of all user groups on BLM land. I worked with local and state governments as well as with the BLM to create a document outlining access to our public lands. I learned that determined people can work together to find common ground and get something accomplished. The following year as club president, I worked on the 5-year permit for Jeep Safari. This process was a smaller sampling of the resource management plan. Once again, I worked with the BLM, we found common ground and ensured our trails would be open and protected. Along with owning my own business and working with government agencies in the Red Rock Four-Wheelers, I've also learned the value of service. I've been a member of my local Rotary Club since 2005. Rotary is the world's largest service organization. This club helps with disaster reliefs, works on clean water and sanitation projects, and works to empower individuals to build a better life for themselves all throughout the world. In 2010, I was honored to serve as my local club president. My duties included setting a budget and running the weekly meetings. As president of the Rotary Club, I was able to lower our monthly dues and still submit a balanced budget. It's pretty good. So I have identified 4 major points that I feel are important to all Utahns. I refer to these as the 4 points of prosperity. The first point is true representation. We have continued to send people back to DC of a ruling class. These are the wealthy, well-connected, or of a certain political pedigree. This type of person can quickly become ensnared with the power grab politics of DC. The Constitution calls for a citizen government, not career politicians. I think it is way past time we elect one of our own to represent us. Imagine being represented by someone who has been in our shoes, someone who is in our shoes. We need someone who knows what it feels like to struggle to pay a mortgage, save money for college. We should demand someone who not only knows about our problems, but someone who shares those problems. And quality education is number 2. For the last several years, we've been spending more and more money on our education system, and we've been getting less and less results. The U.S. Department of Education needs to be completely restructured We need to give way more power to the state boards of education, and the state boards of education in turn needs to give that power to the local school boards. I mean, who knows better how the tax dollars should be spent? The local school boards that live in the community where the money's being spent, or some cabinet level bureaucracy 2,000 miles away. Number 3, deficit in the economy. We have over a $15 trillion deficit in this country. I mean, that number is so large, just to make it easier, we'll break it down. That is approximately, getting close to $50,000 per man, woman, and child in this country. I mean, would you go out and buy a brand new BMW, come home, hand the bill to your kids, and expect them to pay for it? I wouldn't do that to my kids. I don't think any of you would either. I mean, it's way past time they do something about it. It needs to stop. Right, the vast majority of us in this country have had to trim our family budgets. For some of us, this is 20%, or for others of us, it's even more. I think the federal government needs to start by trimming 5% from every single government agency and bureaucracy. I'm certain this could easily be achieved by streamlining departments without resulting in a reduction of services. Government waste has reached epic proportions in this country. You realize there are government agencies that are given a budget each year, and if they don't use the whole budget, they're penalized by having a smaller budget the following year. Some agencies actually come in under budget, but then they have to come up with unnecessary projects so they can spend all of that year's allocated money. Agencies should be rewarded for coming in under budget. And that way they can save that money, they can prorate it, they can use it the next fiscal year to work on some of these big ticket items without having to get more and more budget that will continually grow. And number 4, our public lands. 2/3 of the state of Utah is owned by the federal government. I think the state should have a lot more say in how those lands inside our state's borders are managed. Give the state most of the control over the access, mineral exploration and extraction, and if the state leases this federal land for drilling or something like this, they should share some of the state should share some of the royalties with the federal government. This is a winning combination for everyone involved. The state makes money, the federal government makes money, resulting in less taxation for the citizens of the state, and we'll be able to keep more of our own money in our own pockets. It also creates high-paying jobs. I believe we must force the Congress to act on the wilderness study areas. These lands have been tied up as quasi-wilderness far too long. We either need to get Congress to truly designate them as wilderness, or they need to return them back to the BLM land inventory, or the best option would be to give them back to the state of Utah. We need to protect and preserve the roads and trails we have access in our public lands. These roads and trails are our heritage, and we must ensure that future generations will be able to enjoy them as well. We as users of our public lands are the best stewards possible. We understand that protecting our public land doesn't necessarily mean closing access to our public land. These things and so much more must be accomplished if we're going to be responsible leaders. These things and more must be accomplished if we're going to be able to hand off a better world to the next generation. This, the House of Representatives, is the people's house. It's time we take our house back. I'm Jeramey McElhaney, and I'm running for Congress. Thank you. I should have read it 2 more times.